Here we go.
All right, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everyone. We're excited to start day two of the conference. We had an amazing first day with so many inspiring presentations on our Learn Day, and today we'll analyze. The other exciting thing was we had an engaged audience, which makes us look forward to this second day as well. In the video montage that DDEM created, showing 4 different years of speakers, one of our past participants said, we would like to do something else, but we always find ourselves coming back to the Peralta Online Equity Conference. And we love that. So we hope that this is how you feel. Still, we are aware that you have other responsibilities throughout the day. So don't worry if you have to miss a session. We'll be sharing the recordings for every session on our YouTube channel soon. I'll put the link in the chat so you can go ahead and subscribe. And as we mentioned in the opening session yesterday, this is our 5th year of the conference. We love celebrating it with you all. And every year you make us more excited about this global community. And we can't wait to learn alongside you all again this year and in the future.
Yes, and we are really excited to have our fifth year and all because of you. Thank you so much for being here. And we know you're not here to listen to me or Kevin, so we'll stop talking in a minute. But before we pass the microphone to Dr. Michelle Pacansky-Brock, we would like to thank College of Alameda Guided Pathways team for hosting today's keynote session. Also, before we start, we would like to remind you that this meeting is being recorded. So if you don't want to be seen in the recording, please turn off your webcam. Also, we are using closed caption feature, so feel free to click on show caption or hide caption feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And lastly, please stay muted during the session and share your questions and comments in the chat so that we can direct them to Michelle towards the end of the session. So we're thrilled to open up the second day of the Peralta Online Equity Conference with the keynote from Dr. Michelle Pacansky-Brock, who is a transformative higher education leader with over 20 years of experience driving innovation in online teaching and learning. As a recognized expert in humanizing online education, she has pioneered approaches that measurably improve student engagement and success, particularly for historically underserved populations. Her work sits at the intersection of educational technology, equity, and organizational change. So, Dr. Michelle Pacansky-Brock, welcome. Thank you for making time for today, and we are super excited to listen to you.
Thank you, Dina. It's wonderful to be here, and thank you, Kevin. And I know on behalf of everyone here, we're also grateful for the incredibly hard work you put into these conferences every year. I have coordinated online conferences myself, and I stand in awe. That is all I will say. So thank you. And yeah, thanks for the warm invitation to join you all here today. Before I get started, I want to say a couple of things. I want to acknowledge the privileges that I enter into this conversation through. I want to start there. I still always feel very, unnervous and unsettled about speaking in front of groups about equity, and I know that it's because I'm still kind of living in, finding my biases, and I always will be. And I'm such a learner, and I always make mistakes. So those of you who know me, I put my mistakes right out there, and I will own them. So um, I just want to start by saying that. I entered this space also as a teacher at heart. I come out of the classroom. I started teaching in the classroom as a part-time instructor in the California Community College system at Sierra College in 1999. In 2002, I started teaching full-time art history in the classroom. A few years after that, I fell in love, madly in love with online teaching, and was so excited about the different ways it could engage students who normally don't have access to higher education and don't feel engaged in a traditional classroom. And I found that that engagement was very much driven by the more I brought into my class, into my teaching of my own humanity. And of course, when you're teaching online, you have to do that with technology. And so technology and human presence and relationships have been at the forefront of all of my work since then. And for the past more than a decade, I don't know how many years, I came out of the classroom and I have been supporting faculty since then. For the past 5.5 years, I had the opportunity to engage in research about humanizing online STEM classes, and I'll just touch upon that a little bit today. But that's who I am. I am a practitioner. So while I would talk about things like mental health and psychology, um, that I'm coming into this through the lens of a teacher. Okay, so I just want to acknowledge that, and I realize there are a lot of experts in the room, and I want to welcome you all to contribute into the chat as we share today. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. So the topic of my session is humanizing in the AI era, and some of you here from the system, the California Community College system where I work, may have heard bits and pieces of this or kind of remixed in different ways. I've been waiting for a while now to figure out how to come into this AI conversation, and it was very important for me to find the entrance point that really resonated with the work I was doing, and I feel like I have found it, and I'm excited to share the message that I have here today, although I also recognize it's a rather heavy message. So I do have some slides that you may access at the link that we will put in the chat. There you go. You're welcome to access those if that meets your needs. If you find that disturbing or distracting, no worries, keep it closed. And the same goes for the chat. Use it as it meets your needs. We're going to get started today by asking you to reflect on your life for a moment. So reflect on your past experiences and identify one teacher who has influenced you in a positive and meaningful way. And as you settle on that one person and remember your experiences with that person, how they supported you, the interactions that you've had, I'd like you to identify 2 adjectives that describe that person. And I have a Mentimeter activity that you can either scan with your smartphone, or you can click the link in the chat and enter those 2 adjectives there. I'll give you a moment to do that. And these are the results that I'll talk about in just a moment. I'm just going to let them ebb and flow for a moment. Kind of fun to watch. Now, as those results keep coming in, folks, these are not just your results, and you may be picking up on that already. There's a lot of words on the screen. I have been sharing this activity with audiences actually probably for a year or two now, about 2 years. And I've had in the bottom right corner, you can see the number just about 1,300. We might actually hit 1,300 right now, people, or 1,300 responses. The number up here is about duplicated of that because folks have the option to add up to 2. And I think that the more the numbers, the more the responses, the more impactful this is to look at the results. And I'm going to try to, well, we can visually decode this. I realize it's hard to read, but the largest words are caring. Here are the largest words. Let me go to the summary. the largest words, or the words that are have been provided the most frequently, are okay, maybe we won't wait for that. All right, I gave it a chance. Are caring, encouraging, kind, passionate, and supportive. Now, there are a lot of other words in there, okay? But I want you to hold on to those words. And I want you to ask how much those words are valued in your life as a human, in terms of the impacts this person has had on your life. And we also want to think about how much they're valued in the work that we do every day, in the systems that we work in. And that's going to be our lead in for today's conversation. Those words have been consistent across the responses. They move around a little bit, but pretty consistent. So the humanizing work that I'm referencing, and I'm using this word in the title, so I want to take just a second to unpack it. But essentially, when I say humanizing, I'm talking about course design and facilitation. So course design and teaching in all modalities that center relationships to bolster motivation and learning. That's, in a nutshell, what I'm talking about when it comes to humanizing. And this work that we've been doing in humanizing that I've been a part of is built on the work of so many scholars, mostly scholars of color. I want to recognize the amazing work of Laura Rendon and Luke Wood and Frank Harris, who are cited down below, as well as many, many others. The grant work that I referenced in my introduction, Humanizing Online STEM, was a 5-year grant project that stretched across California public higher ed. It included 18 institutions that participated in the project from the CCC and CSU systems, and one UC system institution that participated in the research component of our work. We had 330 faculty complete a Humanizing Online STEM Academy. And then we did research on the outcomes of the students in those classes, and we found higher success rates and belonging among racially minoritized groups, particularly Latinos and women in STEM classes, and also reduced racial and racial equity gaps. And this was looking at online STEM classes specifically. And we know that STEM disciplines have the biggest racial and ethnic equity gaps amongst all discipline clusters. So moving forward from there, keeping our memorable educators in mind, I want to just share a clip of one student from a humanized class. This is just a 45-second clip, so you can kind of see that impact on a student, because I think that's obviously a really important thing to highlight here.
One time, I got a lower score on my second exam than my first exam, so she reached out to me and asked me if everything was good. As a student, we have a lot of things going on in our life. It showed that she doesn't only care about my learning, but me as a human being. And because of that one little thing that she reached out to me, that made me do even better on my third exam.
It's normal not to understand things the first time around, and being able to establish a good relationship with your professor where you can say, hey, can I talk to you like on a separate note, and can we discuss this a little further?
So that's a very brief clip, but I think if you think about that one comment from the first student, right? He's referencing very small things. Just an instructor who took the time to notice that he didn't do well on a quiz and reach out and check in on him. And as he indicates, knowing that that instructor did that suggests to him that he cares about her. And we know that humans are motivated when others care about us. It's what motivates us to lean in and challenge ourselves. And that motivational energy, that motivational dynamic is even more important for students who have been taught in their lives that they're not good enough and that they don't belong in college. I have been reading a book that I'd like to share with you and recommend. It's called The Last Human Job by Allison Pugh, and it's been like the missing piece of much of the work that I'm sharing with you here today. Allison Pugh uses a term called connective labor, which may be a term you haven't heard before. It was new to me. And she describes it as the work of building and maintaining relationships to help others, often involving emotional understanding and mutual recognition. It's a type of service work that relies on empathy, human contact, and the ability to see the other person. And we know as teachers that it's those interactions between the work that you do and your students that leaves a student feeling seen, that makes the impact across the board, but particularly with students from minoritized groups. The underlying science behind this has to do with the role of emotions in the way that we feel about the world, the emotions and the way that they interplay with everything that we do. Fundamentally, we could say that how a person feels influences everything. It influences the degree to which I can even navigate my computer right now, right? Because I've been having some really big technological problems recently with my presentations, and I go into this freeze mode. So emotions are a really big deal, not just in teaching and learning, in everything. But folks, we aren't doing so well emotionally. In 2023, the US Surgeon General released a report about a loneliness epidemic in the United States. Loneliness is defined as a subjective, distressing experience that results from perceived isolation or inadequate, meaningful connections, where inadequate refers to the discrepancy or unmet need between an individual's preferred and actual experience. I have that last part bolded because I really want to highlight the variability in everything that I'm talking about. When we do quick presentations, we have to make generalizations, and there are always exceptions to the rule. And so when we think about loneliness, we really can't quantify it and say, well, how much should we be interacting with other people? Because it differs from person to person. Each person has an individual preferred and actual experience, okay? So it's the unmet need between the two that defines loneliness. And there are different loneliness scales that are being used to measure loneliness. So it's a survey that if you're interested in learning more, you can go out and check that out yourself. So from the report, we learned that 1 in 2 US adults self-report as lonely. And there are disproportionately impacted groups that won't look familiar to you. Marginalization is psychologically alienating. And so loneliness adds on top of that regular marginalization. What we noticed looking at this report that may stand out as unique, not to mitigate or minimize the impact of the importance of any other group, but the group of young adults from 18 to 24 is a group that is rather new to see in a disproportionately impacted group. Previously, historically, loneliness was an experience that we saw get worse as a person got older, and they're became more physically isolated, and partners pass away and loved ones pass away. That can be described as lonely, and it can increase loneliness on the reporting scale. But to see loneliness starting to spike among young people is rather interesting and startling. The other thing that this report frames is that loneliness increases the odds of dying early by 45%. And the US Surgeon General says it is the equivalent of smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Just going to let that sit there for a moment. We live in a culture, and again, broad generalization, if you identify with white dominant culture in the United States, the culture that I identify with does not value emotions. We are not raised to be emotionally literate. We are not raised to even understand that the way that we feel deeply influences our physical health. There is no barrier between those two things. And the type of loneliness that is soaring today is also a different kind of loneliness. Today, we see more people actually report being lonely when they are around other people. So, of course, we want to ask why, and there are lots of reasons why. We're going to probe into a little bit of it, but because this conversation is in the era of AI, we want to keep a critical eye on technology, and that's where we're headed. But I want to include this quick quote here from the US Surgeon General because I find it empowering. Each of us can start now in our own lives by strengthening our connections and relationships. Our individual relationships are an untapped resource, a source of healing, hiding in plain sight. They can help us live healthier, more productive, and fulfilled lives. Answer that phone call from a friend. I'm going to add, or make that phone call to a friend, or send a text to a friend. Make time to share a meal. Listen without the distraction of your phone. Perform an act of service. Express yourself authentically. The keys of human connection are simple, and we can do them any moment of any day, but they're extraordinarily powerful. Human connection is a basic human need, folks. We need it to survive. We need each other to survive. And how we use technology, in addition to lots of other things, influences our connections to each other. So we want to keep this backdrop of loneliness in mind. And again, I realize I have a pretty narrow spotlight on what I'm talking about, and there are a lot of things I'm not including here, and that's hard to do, but it's also necessary to frame this in a cogent way. So when we think back to technology and where we've been in the 21st century, folks, it's pretty startling. We can go back to the year 2000. I have the wrong date on there. Sorry, that was actually, yeah, that was in 2000, right? Yeah, that's the right date. When 9/11 happened, the Homeland Security, Homeland 2001. Thank you. I always get confused with that. I think about when my son was born and said thank you. It was 2001. Homeland Security emerged, and this is when we saw a real peak in surveillance in a lot of our daily things that we did around the country, right? Not just airports, but other places as well. And around 2005 is when Facebook and YouTube were founded. And this started to really change not only how we shared, but what we shared, right? With videos. I remember hearing about YouTube and literally telling my student who told me about it that that's the stupidest thing ever. Why would anyone want to watch other people's videos? It made no sense to me. And I clearly had no idea what I was talking about. And so these social media components, of course, when they're introduced, start to change not only how we share, but what we share and who we share it with. In 2007, the iPhone, the first smartphone, is released, of course. So now things are going mobile and we're starting to share and document and open up our lives from different places, right? Not just from a desktop computer. Our lives are now becoming more mobile. We can do more things from this untethered experience. In 2012, Cheryl Turkle described us as connected but alone. She said the rising popularity of asynchronous texting in place of voice and phone calls was creating the feeling that nobody was listening to us. And I will go on record and say I pushed back against Sherry Turkle. And I wrote actually a rebuttal to her piece. And I called out how important asynchronous online teaching and learning is. And I stand by that. And that's part of my point here is that everything I'm saying is not true for everyone. Okay, but these are kind of sweeping changes that we've seen. But it is interesting to think about how sending a text, right, when you send that to someone, while it is more accessible and maybe it can increase, right, the communications that you have, it is different than hearing a voice respond instantly on the other side. The adoption of mobile devices and global threats at this time at the rise also saw the rise in what we refer to as helicopter parents. In 2013, DoorDash was founded. And so now, right, food is beginning to be delivered from home as well. That was didn't really take off till many years later. In 2014, 85% of 18 to 19-year-olds owned a smartphone. And in 2015, Amazon surpasses Walmart. Then we saw TikTok be founded. And by this time, we're already seeing the rise of influencers, relationships now being tied to commodities and buying things because of, right, who we admire. And 2020, COVID, shelter in place. 2024, Jonathan Haidt publishes The Anxious Generation. And he says Gen Z became the first generation in history to go through puberty with a portal in their pockets that called them away from the people nearby and into an alternative universe that was exciting, addictive, unstable, and unsuitable for children and adolescents. And folks, that is the backdrop in which AI has emerged. So when we think about technology, we have to think about the context that it's rolling out in. And this is a context that the kind of the backstory that I don't hear a lot in the AI conversations happening. I think it's really important. And this feeds into a specific type of AI that you may not hear much about, emotional AI. Emotional AI is also influenced and trained on data, but it's trained on things like facial expressions and voice recognition. And the data is looking to try to make sense of the way a person feels based on the way they look and the way that they sound, their verbal and their nonverbal cues. And that data is used in different technologies, different products, and different tools. And we often hear that it's personalizing learning, right? And that may be true in some ways, but we have to be critical about other ways that it is being used. Some of the risks of emotional AI are that verbal and nonverbal cues do not necessarily mirror a person's emotions. We know that human emotions are much more complex and nuanced than what we see on our face. We know that even humans guard the way we feel. We filter how we feel. So making that claim that the way we look the way that our face looks could actually tie into the way that we're feeling is a pretty big stretch to make. Facial recognition software is biased. It's shown to be more likely to exclude individuals with Black and brown skin, particularly women of color. And the prediction of feelings based on external expression results in emotional stereotypes and algorithmic bias. We know that cultural differences get left out and neurodifference gets left out, for example. And perhaps one of the biggest risks is that emotions could start to replace humans in relationships, which may sound far-fetched, but I want to play this 1-minute ad for a product that is now available for order.
Gosh, I'm out of breath. We made it. Woo! I don't know how to woo very good. That's fair. All right, let's go.
Let me show you how to game, bro, okay? Oh, come on, come on. Oh, let's go!
Are you serious? Come on, man. I hate this game.
Take notes, baby.
Oh man, you guys suck.
Bro, you look like the back
Let's
of the
go, let's go.
Dude, what? How did you do that?
I know the effects are crazy. It's dank. I could eat one of these every day. Oh. Sorry, I got you messy.
It's really nice up here. How'd you find this place?
I don't know. I just kind of like to come up here to be by myself. I've never brought anybody else. I mean, besides her.
She goes everywhere with you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Guess I must be doing something right then.
I guess so. We'll see.
So I'll let your responses filter into the chat. Some difficult responses, seeing that, thinking about the way that AI can start to take the place of humans in relationships. And I'm waiting to see if anyone has a different take on that, because sometimes people say, well, you know what, that might not be so bad for some people. So again, I'm not here to make sweeping claims, although it may feel like I'm making sweeping claims. I'm really doing my best to acknowledge that this is a nuanced conversation. But what we need to recognize is that technology, these are products. We are dealing with products. And industry is interested in making money. Okay. And so when there's a loneliness epidemic, that's an opportunity for products to step in. And there is an entire marketplace around emotional AI that you may or may not have heard of lately. I'm not going to talk much about this because I don't have much time, but this stuff is horrifying to me. I'll be very candid, particularly this space known as grief tech, where there is now technology that is replicating the existence of loved ones who've passed away, and people are paying to have access to those tools so that they can continue to chat with someone, even though it's not someone, it's a tool that is replicating interactions of their lost loved one. We are starting as humans to see a time when our emotions are becoming a commodity. Our emotions are the very thing that make us human. They're so important. Even the horrifying, painful, deepest, darkest emotions are part of what makes us human. And those are the moments when we need each other most. So if we're starting to numb those emotions, we're starting to further distance our human connections. And this leads me back to the work of Allison Pugh, the same book I referenced earlier, who is suggesting in her book, The Last Human Job, which I highly recommend, that there is a new digital divide coming up. There's a potential for a new digital divide. Teaching and other connective labor jobs exist within systems of efficiency that degrade the value of connective labor and make automation more appealing and more likely. So these systems of efficiency are based on quantification, of counting, of productivity. Those of us leaning into equity work know that we can't have a checklist for equity. We can't quantify it, right? It is based in the messiness of relationships, amongst other things. That qualification is something that we need to embrace and see become a value. But that's not what's valued in education, in higher education, particularly when we get into open access and minority serving institutions who are the least funded. In the future, the people on the top may get their connective labor from the people on the bottom, who in turn get theirs from a bot. And as a person who works in a community college setting and serves the most diverse student population in the world, this is something that really alarms me and something that I think needs to be at the front and center of the AI conversation, along with other things. And thank you for all that you're sharing in the chat. I am one who has a hard time going back and forth between the two. So I'm going to keep moving forward. And I just want to say thank you for your engagement, and I encourage that. So the work of Allison Pugh has really made me think about how we are at a crossroads now, and how we use AI in education moving forward will influence that digital divide of connective labor. And we're standing in those crossroads. The California Community College Chancellor's Office has offered a humans framework. And I'm not going to unwrap it here for you. You can go to the link and learn more about it if you would like. But this is the way that we have been encouraged in our system to approach and make choices about the tools that we use. And the very first one says human-centered approach. And what I want to encourage is that the humans that are involved with making the decisions around technology have to include teachers. We have to be including teachers in the earliest evaluation of tools and whether or not they work. And we have to recognize that it gets a little bit difficult and messy when we're looking for data, right? And that's where we get it gets a little bit hedgy in terms of, how are we going to validate that this is important to the relational work that we do? So moving forward, let's start thinking about how we can center human connection in the AI era. And I have just 4 quick things I want to share with you that some guidance that I'd like to share that's helpful for me at this point where we are. A year from now, this may be totally different. But first of all, think critically about how you use generative AI and whether or not the use, when you pick up a tool and start to work it into your practice, is replacing the interactions between you and your students, or even between you and your colleagues. And secondly, build trust through your imperfect, authentic presence. This has been at the heart of the work that I've been doing in humanizing asynchronous online classes that are void of imperfect human presence unless we intentionally ensure that it's there. Be human, be you, be perfectly imperfect. These are 4 examples of liquid syllabi that have they're kind of like a welcome package that we roll out to students before a class starts. And front and center is an imperfect video about the instructor portraying themselves as a human, doing things that they like, talking about their lives, just welcoming students. It can be so simple. And this is just a clip of my welcome video that I've used for students. Hi there, I'm Michelle Pacansky-Brock, and I'm going to be your online instructor this term. I look forward to getting to know you, and I want to say thanks for taking a couple minutes out of your time to watch this video. I'm not going to play the whole thing, but I have a point here that I'm trying to make with this. Did I miss that link? Oh, here it is. I put it in the wrong spot. So when it comes to how we use AI, AI is now being used for digital doubles, synthetic media. And this is not me speaking this video. This is my digital double. Hi there. How are you today? Thanks for taking the time to watch this video. I'm looking forward to getting to know you and supporting you throughout our semester-long journey together. I believe teaching online is a valuable and important component of supporting students to achieve their goals. And I'm delighted. Why did I do that? Why on earth would I have used a tool in that way? I don't know. Sometimes I still wonder if I made the right choice there. But again, I did not speak those words. That is my digital double. And I made it with a tool called Hey Gen for free. This technology is advancing very quickly, and it is going to start making its way into your teaching and learning landscapes, if not your own, your colleagues. And I'm not saying that there isn't a place for it. There's going to be ways that we use synthetic media in teaching and learning. But what I want you to be mindful of is, if you're using a video, ask yourself, what's your intention behind that video? Is your intention simply to deliver a piece of content? Or are you at a point in your class where you're building trust, right? Is trust building and sharing who you authentically are part of what you're doing in that video? And that's that's not a place for AI. And the words that we use, sure, I can put the tool in the chat, Elissa. It's Hey Jen. There you go. Not that I'm advocating its use. The words that we use really matter. So when you hear tool companies talking about how an AI tool can humanize or personalize our teaching and students' learning, I push back on those words because look at the roots of those words: human and person. Words matter, okay? But customize is a different word. And there are ways that we can start thinking about using AI to customize our instruction. Like maybe this.
Hola, ¿cómo estás hoy? Gracias por tomarte el tiempo de ver este video. Estoy deseando conocerte y apoyarte a lo largo de nuestro viaje juntos durante el semestre. Creo que enseñar en línea.
And again, maybe not with an instructor intro video, but with, maybe a micro lecture, right? If students have the choice to listen to it in the language of their choice, this could be something that could be a way to customize learning. And Sierra, I want to recognize what you're saying about the lack of emotion in the voice. Yes, if we had more time, I would have you really look and analyze and unpack what you're seeing and hearing, because the things that get left out, at least today where we are with the synthetic media technology, are the nuances and the nonverbal cues and the verbal cues. And those are the things that human brains pick up on. When we're in a place of threat, that's what we scan for. We look for the warmth in a facial gesture and also in hand gestures, right? And that is what is getting left out. It does not do American Sign Language. I am not an ASL expert, but from what I understand, that nonverbal piece of ASL is absolutely critical, and that's not something, well, AI is trying to do it. You will find tools that are trying to do it, but what I hear, it's not being done very well. And HeyGen doesn't do it. Also, build trust through transparent communications. Talk to students about AI. There's a wonderful resource called the AI Assessment Scale by Perkins, Rowe, and McVaugh that I recommend you take a look at. It's designed by teachers to be used by teachers in their teaching for students to transparently guide students how AI may or may not be used on every single assignment. And lastly, think about designing your assignments as we go into this redesign phase. For those of you who are ready to get there, for those of you who choose to get there, when we redesign assignments, think about designing them as connection catalysts. Think about the advice that the Surgeon General gave us about making connections. What if we started to bake human connection into our assignments and have the first step be to go out and talk to someone about a particular topic outside of the class, collect some data, do an interview. If that's too much of a lift for someone to sit down and talk to someone for whatever reason, then do a survey, right? These human interactions, and then bring that data back into the classroom and build on that with your assignment. We're moving from product to process. And as we start making that transition further and further from product to process, let's start thinking critically about how assignments can be catalysts for human connection. And if we keep that centered in the work that we do, and we don't use AI to replace the human interactions, then I'm hopeful that we're not going to go down that road and lead us to a digital divide of connective labor. I do have more slides that you're welcome to plug through. They'll give you some examples about how you can use AI to help you brainstorm some ideas about assignments as connective catalysts. But I'm going to leave those out of my presentation today, just so we can have a little bit of time left for some questions. Thank you so much, folks. And I'm going to stop talking and see if there's anything that you'd like me to address from the chat, Didem or Kevin.
Thank you so much for this wonderful speech, and eye-opening speech too. We sometimes don't have time to reflect on things, and I remember the timeline from 2000 to 2024, how technology is influencing how we connect and how we feel. That was really amazing to see that timeline. And I don't know how we should feel about replacing AI replacing human interaction. Is it going to happen? Should we be scared about that? Or, we have confused feelings about this. I'm looking at the chat to see if we have any questions. And let's see. We have one question about the slides. Jill is asking if this link be accessible after the presentation as well, the one you shared in the chat.
Yes, I don't have any plans to disable it.
Okay.
And we've already linked to it from the conference website. So people, if they forget the one that Michelle posted, and I think Michelle, the one that you posted didn't have the word equity in the link, so I reposted it with that word.
Oh, thank you. Brilliant.
And we have one question about, I missed the name of the tool. What is the name of the, oh, you already answered that, Michelle, in the chat.
Yeah.
I don't think we have any other that I see, but Kevin, help me if I'm missing any.
No, I think the rest are comments based on statements that Michelle made. And
yeah, and I just like to, if anybody has another comment or a reflection they'd like to share, it certainly doesn't have to be a question. I know the way my brain works, I don't have questions at the end, but I just, there might be something resonating with you, and I'd love to hear from anybody in the chat, or if you'd like, I don't know if we're open to unmiking.
yes, of course, just raise your hand.
Hi, Jim. You always ask such good questions. I'm curious to get your take, Michelle, on whether generative AI is a novel disruption transformation. Yeah, I guess I should read that out loud. You're asking if my take on whether AI is an inevitable disruption, transformation, revolution, education, as so much hype seems to say, or just another in a long lines of technology in education that gets a ton of hype, and then we just go on pretty much as we do with incremental adoption. I think what I feel concerned about is where we are right now with higher education, and so much feels unstable, and there is such a need for different types of higher education. And I think higher education is going to change. I don't know if it's directly a result of AI, but I think it's going to be part of it. I think it's going to enable different ways for people to get what they need from higher education, and that will start to have lots of impacts in what we do. But I don't think it's the technology alone. I feel you, Jim. I have this question a lot, and I also am not a big believer in making predictions of the future, so I'm very hesitant in responding to that. But I do think there's going to be changes ahead, and I don't know what it's going to look like. I can't make that prediction.
Yung Poo has a hand up.
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, thank you for your presentation. So my question is relevant to AI and academic honesty because I'm an instructional designer. So there are many faculty, they are very concerned, like students now they have AI and it's easy for them to cheat. So it's kind of like AI also make faculty and students, they kind of like don't trust each other because they feel like each other are using AI and they are not authentic. So I'm also wondering, do you have any thoughts about like how we can humanizing AI when we also have to address economic honesty?
Yes, I do. And thank you for that very good question. And I want to acknowledge that I am not in the classroom right now, so it's easy for me to say all the things that I'm saying. And teachers' work is very difficult, but we shouldn't be waiting until the first assessment to talk about AI. I don't believe it is the right approach to just put a policy in a syllabus and not actually bring it into the dialogue in our classroom, assuming there's dialogue. So I do believe that the more AI is front and center in a student's experience and in what a faculty brings into the classroom and talks to students about, then the more we're creating opportunities to have meaningful conversations about it, because I do believe the learning has to happen both ways. I think it's important for faculty to share, this is what I think is happening, and this is my concern, and this is what I want to see more of, or something like that, right? And then students have a voice in that too. So I've heard some faculty that are developing surveys and having students complete surveys and actually bringing that data into the classroom, so you have a starting point for a conversation. Because sometimes what can make an instructor feel nervous is like that first step. What do I say? How do I open this conversation, right? Especially when it's something that you're feeling so much angst about. So that's something to think about. But yeah, that conversation, starting a conversation, a catalyst for a conversation is really important. And understanding how students feel about it, because students are also just on edge. Some instructors say they can use it in this way. Others say, if I see you using it, then you're going to get an F. And then it's like, what does use it mean? I mean, so it's very complicated. And that's a perfect place to bring in conversations and dialogue.
We have time for one more question from Jill, and then we will start getting ready for our next session that starts in 9 minutes.
Oh, thank you. My question is about looking forward to the trajectory of how things are developing. This idea of personalization of learning and customization of learning, and where that line is between that and the real challenge that you get in a class when you're dealing with other students and you're being pushed out of your comfort zone as a developer of online courses. That's one of the things that I work with instructors to do that. You know, as much as it allows for customization, it does include different ways for voices to come in. There's also this idea of pushing a bit. And so how do you manage that line? Because I do, you know, I really am drawn to the things that you're talking about today with the way AI is going. That friend.com was just horrifying. And I'm concerned that if we're thinking about personalization being really, really important, that what's lost on the other side of that. And so anyway, if you could speak to any of that, I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, and again, I like the word customization more than personalizations. That's what I'll stick with. But I think where customization will bring great value is meeting the needs of difference, right? Those who are neurodivergent, different languages in the classroom, and the variation of needs. Like when you think of UDL, I think that's where it has a nice fit. But yeah, that tension that you're talking about, we need to have that tension and that struggle in terms of cognition, because we know that's the way the brain works. The brain doesn't advance. It doesn't advance. The cognition has to have struggle. We have to and move outside of the comfort zone, right? To actually develop our brain and become more knowledgeable. And so, yes, that is definitely part of it. But I don't think I can answer that question specifically because teaching is such a contextual, topic. And so the discipline that is being taught is at the heart of everything that we're saying right now. So a math teacher is going to approach that very differently than, an art history instructor would. But I think that you're asking really good and important questions. And it's important that everyone have a seat at this table and have a voice at this table, because all of these conversations, all of these voices and perspectives are so valuable.
That's a great way to end. I'm hopeful that everyone will join me in thanking Michelle Pacansky-Brock for an amazing plenary talk for our day 2. So we are going to stop the recording now and continue with our day. Stay around in about 6 minutes for another session led by Christelle Young.
And it's going to be in this room, so don't go anywhere. And we're going to continue talking about humanizing online classrooms. Thank you so much again, Michelle. Thank you very much. There's so much to unpack and reflect. We hope to see you again.
Thank you. Bye-bye.